It is the final day of July, July 31st, Monday here on WagerTalk TV. August begins tomorrow. That means we are inching ever so close to the start of the college and pro football season. And we do have a little NFL actually this week on Thursday night. I am Steve Merrill filling in for the Prez. Don't you worry. He'll be back tomorrow. And that is Andy Lang filling in for Teddy Covers. He'll be back, I think, maybe next week. He's getting closer as well. Football is getting close, Andy. That means Teddy Covers is getting close to return as well. But once again, Steve and Andy's has the Monday edition, the final day of July edition. And we do this every Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, live here on WagerTalk TV. And then, of course, more importantly, archived 24/7 for your viewing pleasure on WagerTalk TV. Like, subscribe, and comment below. Let us know what you're looking at on a daily basis as well. Andy, great show. It's Monday, so we have our normal double team from Vegas here. We got Marco D'Angelo. He's going to be looking at some baseball. And Bryan Leonard, he's going to be looking at some baseball as well. But in between, you're going to talk a little bit about UFC. I know you had a nice weekend as well. You got a best bet loaded already for this coming week. So check that out, Andy Lang. $9 Monday, by the way, at wagertalk.com for each and every capper today. It's a great time to check some of those best bets, not only for Monday, but advanced plays as well, including Andy's big UFC best bet. And also, we're going to have a better segment question at the end of the show as well, so you can learn while you earn and as you watch today. Andy, speaking of USC, we're going to get to that in a little bit in the What Bettors Learn, but how was your weekend overall?
That was a pretty good weekend. The best bet in sports, Steve, is a minus 300, at times a minus 400, and yet it continues to be the best bet in sport. That, of course, is Max Verstappen to win a Formula One race. His worst finish this year is second. Now it's
Unreal.
9 straight. Rain, dry, and it's one of those where, listen, you're never going to just tell people, well, just bet this minus 400, but it is the best bet in sports. It's the ultimate parlay piece because you can find something else that's pretty juiced and just keep laying it. I mean, this guy hasn't not won a race in 4 months, I believe it is. It's something incredible. So it was a really good weekend. We did our Road to Millions. We did a bankroll reset day where we recapped how our last week went. We normally do it on Wednesday. We're only up 1.5 units since last Wednesday. That's not anything it's not a huge number or anything, but a good friend of the show, Bob, who follows us on UFC and everything, he had such a great quote, and this is right up your alley, when we were talking about little bits of profit. It's kind of hard to brag about that, but he was like, you'll never go broke if you're turning a profit. And it's kind of one of those slow burn comments. I was like, yeah, you know what? I am fine with 1.5 units of profit over the last 5 days. So that quote is going to stick with me forever. You'll never go broke if you're turning a profit. So we don't always need to go for the home run on some of these bets. A slow, patient approach is always kind of the best way. So it was a good weekend. I'm frustrated that Formula One is taking 4 weeks off because now I got to find another lock until he comes back. But yeah, it was a good weekend. And I'm excited to talk a little UFC. We got our best bet that is up right now. Nice little 3-0 run for me. I'm keeping it simple. Just one play. That's all I need. One play per event. And I'll bring in 2 or 3 units.
Yeah, and for those viewers that don't know, Max Verstappen is a Formula One driver, not a NASCAR driver. So yeah, he's been dominating. And Andy, if you wanted to sum up in 10 seconds why I don't watch Formula One and I really don't handicap it, you do very well with it. You find other bets than just, by the way, there's a ton of ways to bet Formula One. That's where Andy makes the majority of his money, is with the other bets, qualifying, for example, and other things. But yeah, that sums up pretty much why I've never gotten into Formula One open wheel racing in general. It's a little top heavy, and we've talked about that before. It's basically one team and really 2 drivers, and in this case, really 1 driver this year, Verstappen. But it is an excellent point. Betting in general, everyone says, oh, you can't lay big juice. It doesn't matter. The whole key to winning long-term in betting is getting a better price than the true odds. And if the true odds are minus 900 or minus 800 and you're getting minus 400, that's a fantastic advantage play. And that's exactly what Andy's talking about. So big picture, even if you don't follow Formula One, it's a nice lesson, and it translates well to baseball. And we'll bring on Marco D'Angelo because baseball, of course, is a money line sport. And, guys, Teddy has mentioned this now for a long time, the last several months, even maybe since last year, that he plays bigger favorites than he's ever played over 30 years. He's not afraid to play up to minus $2 now. Marco, let me get your thoughts on that real quick. I know you always look for live dogs. I know Bryan Leonard, who's on next, definitely looks for live dogs. But there is something to be said about how the general public shies away once the money line gets to 150, 160, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's not value still with bigger favorites.
Oh, absolutely, Steve. And there's different spots to step in and do that. Obviously, I'm a situational handicapper along with, using raw stats. And, if you get a team that, is a big favorite and they stub their toe the night before, you're generally going to get a pretty good effort out of that team, the next night. And the line's going to be priced generally in the same range that it was the day before, maybe a little bit less. In actuality, in those cases, it should be more. So, yeah, if you can find the value, but everybody says, where is the value? You're still laying that big number. But as Andy said, there's different ways to do it. A lot of times I'll look at those big favorites and try to bring them down by doing a first 5-inning wager, maybe lay a half a run instead of taking a full game. And of course, you can always lay 1.5 runs on a game. I like to do it more on road teams than home teams for the obvious reasons of there's nothing more sickening than seeing the final score of 2-1 and you're laying 1.5 and you didn't get that last at bat. But I agree with you. And that goes back to, and I know you asked Brian the same question coming up in the next segment with him, he'll tell you Super Bowl, so many of the sharps here in town will lay those gigantic numbers on certain props that just never seem to hit. And it's all good until one of them gets there. And, just ask the people that were playing no safeties every year in the Super Bowl. And then it happened, two years in a row that there was a safety. And so now you only have to win the next 18 years to make those two up. But yes, the value was there.
Right. Well, and it goes back to what Andy said earlier, too. Are you taking a short time, narrow perspective, or are you taking a long-term investment approach, right? And if you're going to have some tough losses at minus 800 sometimes, but if the true value is minus 1,200 and you can consistently play minus 800, over the long haul, you're going to come out ahead, but you occasionally will have a tough loss. The big problem with the big money lines real quickly is that the split is huge, So realistically, there's usually not value with either side on those props because say minus 1,600, the take back is plus 800. Normally the true odds are minus 1,100, minus 1,200, which means neither side has value because you're dealing with an 800-cent line versus baseball where you have a 10-cent line, minus 110, even money, for example. So there are less opportunities, but that doesn't mean there's not sometimes value laying a big price. Marco, you talked about situational handicapping in baseball. It's something that I love to look at because everyone talks about starting pitchers, right? Stats, but situational handicapping gets overlooked. By the way, Ralph Michaels, his son Jeff Michaels, and myself, Steve Merrill, we did a great video this past weekend. It's got a good shelf life. It wasn't just about the weekend games. It was about 3 or 4 different angles, such as extended road trips, extended homestands, losses of favorite, stuff you can use not only this season, but next season as well. So once again, check that out here on WagerTalk TV, MLB Handicapping 2.0. If you hit subscribe and you hit the bell for instant alerts whenever those videos are posted, you'll be the first to know. And I bring that up, Marco, because every Monday I love talking baseball with you, and you and I always look, this makes our short list, right? And Andy and I are going to talk later about our handicapping process. But that Sunday night ESPN game is such a big game. It's the biggest baseball game of the week. And then you have a divisional matchup like Yankees-Orioles last night. And then the Orioles, who are the best team in the American League, Atlanta Braves, best team in the National League. Now they go to Toronto. I mean, on the surface, this looks like a tough spot. How would you best play this game tonight, Baltimore at Toronto?
Well, you hit the nail on the head about talking about situational spots. There is no question that Baltimore, from the beginning of the season straight through, has been the most consistent team in baseball. They're at the top of the AL East. We know how Tampa Bay started the season, but Baltimore, is right there. But they're the team that everybody keeps looking at and saying how good their record is, but can they sustain it? Nobody seems to truly believe in the Orioles. Now, they had a statement series. Granted, the Yankees aren't what the Yankees have been in years past, but you still put the pinstripes on and put that logo on that jersey, and everybody gets up for playing the Yankees. So that was a huge series for them over the weekend. Even though the Yankees aren't on top, it's still what I like to refer to as a statement series. And they made their statement. They won 2 out of 3. That in itself would make them ripe for a letdown coming off the Yankee series. But now you throw in that they played the final game of the series, the rubber game of the match, on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. This is just an absolute horrible spot for Baltimore as they travel to play Toronto tonight. Then you take a look at the pitching matchup, and we got Kyle Gibson on the mound for Baltimore. He's a guy that's not been a big mystery, okay? This guy can get hit. Oftentimes he has control problems. I'm looking at him tonight going in there to face this Toronto lineup, and I think he's going to give up some runs. The counterpart on the mound for Toronto tonight is Chris Bassett. Here's a guy that's had 3 seasons in one. He started the season out tremendous. Then he had that end of May, June swoon, if you want to call it that, where he was in trouble, had control problems, was getting hit hard. Now he's back pitching well. He's had 6 straight games where he's thrown allowed 3 runs or less. I think he is the way to go tonight in this one. But when you get to the late innings, in this Baltimore team always seems to try to find a way to win games. I don't trust the Toronto bullpen. So let's take them out of the equation and make this a first 5-inning wager for me. I'm going to take Bassett over Gibson. I think a huge edge there. You take the situation where you have a Baltimore in a letdown spot, hangover effect, whatever you want. They get out of the gate slow. That says first 5 innings for me.
Do you target these teams on purpose for first fives? Like I know this game in particular, you're looking at starting pitching matchup, but like when you're looking at the slate for the day, do you go into it and say, I'm only going to look at the starting pitching because I want first 5 innings? Or do you just kind of look at a game and say, the bullpens I don't trust, I'm going to limit this to a first 5? So I guess my question is, first 5 innings, is that what you're looking at first, or does the first 5, full game just kind of appear as you're doing the research on these games?
Well, first, let me be clear. I absolutely hate freaking bullpens. Okay. And the situation, another case yesterday, and I always kick myself. There's no worse feeling when you're on the fence. Do you want to go first 5 or do you want to go the full game? And you make the wrong decision and the bullpen bites you in the butt and they won the first 5 innings, as was my play yesterday with Philadelphia. I was on the fence back and forth which way I wanted to go with that one. But because of the way the game went the day before, I felt I was okay with the bullpens. And that's something you have to look at. Every game's different, Andy. You check the bullpens. Who was used the day before? That has a big indicator. Now, I'll tell you, there's some teams that I won't even look at a full game because I don't trust their bullpen. So if I start to handicap the game, it's going to be first 5 and that's it. Now, to me, the first 5 is a truer handicap because it's mono against mono. You've got the 2 starting pitchers, and for all intents and purposes, you're looking at them going the first 5 innings. When you deal with a full game, I say this all the time, generally speaking, you got to have 4 people do their job correctly for you to cash the ticket. It starts with your starter, of course. He gives you the 5 innings, maybe 6, but these cookie cutter managers that will pull a guy after 5 or 6 innings, then you bring in a guy in the 6th inning, your middle reliever, then you bring in the 7th inning setup guy, the 8th inning setup guy, and then your closer. Okay, like I said, 4 guys now have to do their job. So, yes, I do like first 5 inning wagers more than the full game, but I do a good mix of both.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen for me, Marco, is definitely the first 5 determinator because, as you said, that's random. You don't know for sure he's going to be out there. But if you look at a team like the Orioles, 2 relievers, I believe, on the All-Star team this year. Great bullpen overall. It's not a fluke. They've been the best money line team in baseball for the past 2 seasons. So first 5 is taking that out. And then again, you're playing that letdown angle after the Sunday night home win, having to travel. You would think if they're going to struggle, it'd be early on. But we'll see. You never know. Baseball's a crazy sport, but I think it makes a lot of sense. That's Marco D'Angelo, WagerTalk.com. And don't forget Marco, Andy Lang, myself, Steve Merrill, everybody at WagerTalk.com. Their best bets are just $9. Because it is $9 Monday site-wide. No promo code needed. Check those out right now at WagerTalk.com. And Marco will be back with me and Dwayne Bryant, by the way, for more baseball talk in a couple hours at 2 o'clock Eastern today on Monday. MLB first pitch Monday through Friday here on the network as well. We normally go at 2 o'clock Eastern, but on Wednesday and Thursday, check in even earlier because there's a lot of daytime games. You get some bonus early daytime action on Wednesday and Thursday. MLB first pitch yet another reason to hit subscribe and hit the bell for instant alerts, because when those early shows go on Wednesday and Thursday, you will know instantly we can get some daytime advice. All right, Marco, while we still have you here before first pitch, let's look at another game for tonight. Boston and Seattle, that AL East, we just talked about Baltimore and Toronto, ultra competitive, obviously. Red Sox are now a game ahead of the Yankees, so they're not in last place anymore. But for a good past month or so, they've been in last, and at times they would have been in first in the AL Central. That's how good the AL East is and how bad the Central is. The Mariners, I believe, fourth in their own division, still in the playoff mix because the AL West is loaded. So really important series starting tonight, Boston at Seattle, with two teams fighting for that wild card in tough divisions. How you playing this one?
Well, Steve, one thing I want to say about first pitch today, I'm on both shows today, but I'm doing two different games in the next show. So don't think since you heard me here, you got them. I got two different games we're going to break down. As far as this one goes, Steve, I'm playing a situation spot here, and I just think Boston's in a bad spot going into Seattle tonight. Now, you know that I'm a big guy where I talk about, I'm a big guy. I know Brian's laughing. He can't say a joke in the background there. But I love fading teams coming home off of a road trip. And so Seattle's coming home off a road trip. But I'm going to back them here because I think it's Boston in the bad spot. And the reason being is they're forced to throw Nick Pivetta into the starting role tonight. Now, if you remember, Pivetta started the season as a starter, and it was just plain horrible. His ERA this year in 8 starts was over 6. His whip was over 1.5. You know the math. If you're putting 1.5 base runners on per inning, bad things are going to happen, and that's what was happening to him. They moved him to the bullpen, and all of a sudden, he had a new lease on life. He was that long reliever, and he did well in that role. But tonight, they got to put him in the starting role because yesterday was a bullpen start day for the Red Sox. They used 7 pitchers yesterday. So he's going to get the start in long relief. And the problem I see here is, was it a mental thing with him? Is it easier for him to come into a game where he's not the starter as opposed to being the starter? It's a different mindset preparation for the game. If he carries over what he's been doing in the bullpen, we could get a good start out of him. But I'm going to bank on it the other way. The other part of it is they may be forced to try to milk an extra inning out of him today because they did use 7 pitchers yesterday. They used him today because they haven't had a day off and forced to use the spot starter. Then I look at George Kirby going for Seattle, and he has been pitching well. He's allowed 3 runs or less in 6 of his last 8 starts. To me, that's a good start edge for us with the starting pitchers. And I like the Seattle bullpen over the Boston bullpen as well. Not a big edge there, but I do like them at home. They pitch better at home in protecting wins. And speaking of wins, Seattle, a team that everybody, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people that I respect thought this Seattle team was going to contend this year in the AL West. They haven't done that, but they are on a winning streak right now. They're playing better baseball. I'm going to look for them to continue that as they've won 4 of their last 5. Keep this streak going right now. Let's go with Seattle tonight. And here's a little stat for you. Seattle, when they're a favorite of 150 or less, and when you have the smaller favorites, you think that the record wouldn't be as good because they're more competitive games. They're 61-36 the last 2 seasons. In Boston, the longer they go on a road trip, the worse they are. They're just 10-24 this season after Game 3 on the road. So I'm going to go ahead and take Seattle tonight to get the first game of this series.
Yeah, my question was just Kirby. He's been a little inconsistent. Just in those last 3-game stretch, he got torched his last game, lights out the game before, and then the game before that. I don't know. We seem like we're getting a every other game type of situation from him. You looking at him more long-term, or because short-term kind of worries me a little bit?
Yeah, but if you do notice, Andy, his numbers at home are better than his numbers on the road. He's 6-3 win-loss record. They're 7-3 in his 10 home starts. I'm going to go with that. And, he has been that in and out pattern here in the last few starts. But if we follow that in and out pattern, Doesn't that mean this is the good one coming tonight? Because he's coming off the bad one in the last one. So, yeah, Kirby's been a little inconsistent at times this year. But overall, he's been a much more consistent pitcher than Pivetta has for Boston.
Pattern recognition by Marco D'Angelo there for tonight's game on Monday. And once again, you can hear more baseball talk from Marco. 2 different games in a couple hours on MLB First Pitch here at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Monday. I'll be on as well, along with Dwayne Bryant, breaking down some games with Dan Alexander as the host, back in the host seat today. And as I mentioned, Marco, it's $9 Monday. Your 4% and 5% plays have been just fantastic over the last 20 months. You're up over 85 units of profit, and you've got a strong 4% MLB Grand Slam for $9 Monday. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we had a nice weekend until we stubbed our toe yesterday with our 4% plays. I told you that was the Phillies who lost it in extra innings, but we had big blowout wins on Friday with that 5% that we were here last time I was on the show telling you about. San Diego won 7-1, and then we had a 17-4 blowout on Houston on Saturday. Philly could have used a couple of those runs yesterday. But check it out tonight, $9 Monday. It is a 4% play. And guys, I don't have 4% every day. And all of my plays, generally, if I have one, there's only one of them. And that is tonight. It's a Grand Slam play for $9. Normally 25. Jump on board.
It's Marco D'Angelo, part of $9 Monday at WagerTalk.com, a strong 4% best bet. And once again, Marco will be back on in a couple hours at 2 o'clock Eastern, MLB First Pitch. More baseball talk today on Monday. And Andy, you talked at the beginning about big favorite cashing consistently in Formula One. Let's talk about underdogs now. UFC is another sport you specialize in, another one of the off sports, if you will. Checking out Kyle Anthony's page right now, actually. We had him on last week, and he had a 5-pack, and he said he might add another best bet. And he said 4 of those 5 were dogs. Well, I'm looking right now how he did. He went 4-1-1 overall. So I'm assuming he hit some dogs. In fact, he did. He hit 3 of them here and had a no play on another one. So, man, Kyle is extremely good in MMA. You're extremely good in MMA, UFC. Every sport's different, right? It seems like dogs continue to cash. What have you learned?
So, yeah, what did we learn? Well, we learned that you got to be really careful on the main cards of these pay-per-views in UFC. So the last 5 pay-per-views, I'm not talking about the fight nights that you could watch for free. I'm talking about the main cards on the pay-per-views. So again, not the prelims, not the fight nights, just the pay-per-views on the main cards. On the last 5 pay-per-views main cards, underdogs are 12-14, just straight up. You're betting every single underdog, you're making money. At UFC 291, underdogs on the main card went 3-2, $100 better, you won $210. All you had to do was blanket bet the underdogs. UFC 290, the underdogs went 2-4. Okay, not great. But the 2 underdogs that hit were plus 200 and plus 188. So you went 2-4 and you lost $12. These pay-per-views, and I think what's happening is a lot of these fights that they're putting on the main cards, they're just even. They're putting the best fighters against the best fighters for most of these fights. Now, there was a fight this weekend, Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. I thought you would be crazy to take the underdog in that one, but all the other ones, they're just too equal to have that big of a distance in these prices. The main event, I thought it was a coin flip, and yet Dustin Poirier was minus 150, Gaethje was plus 130. When I did my UFC video, I said the only way to play this is the underdog. Like, if the odds were flipped, you would say the exact same thing. Just play the underdog. What happens? Head kick, Gaethje wins, cashes for plus 130. So when you're breaking down these UFC fights and you're looking at a pay-per-view, when you get to that main card, the underdogs are basically the only way to go. It's where all the value is. When you're looking at the prelims and you're looking at some of the other UFC fight nights, it's a little bit different. But if you're looking for a really, really good way to invest a smaller amount of money for a big return, it's just becoming obvious that these underdogs on these pay-per-view main cards are the way to go. And you're right. Kyle did a great job. I read his write-ups. They were basically spot on. And it's so great when you're holding an underdog ticket and it's a close fight and the announcer says, like, Judge 1 hasn't scored for so-and-so. That immediately it means you got a split decision. So you're so happy to be holding an underdog ticket when you know you got that split decision because you made the best value bet. It's the best fighters against each other. And on these pay-per-views, underdog, main card, only way to go.
Yeah, I talked earlier about Formula One. One of the reasons I don't watch it as much, and one of the reasons I don't get into UFC like I used to, is because there is so much randomness with the judge decisions. I can't stand judged sports, by the way. Figure skating, UFC, boxing. I mean, boxing's like the ultimate ridiculous sport over the years, but it makes logic, right? If it's somewhat random, if it's competitive, right? Underdogs probably have value. So, it's the opposite when Verstappen's winning every race. And it's also, as you said, the opposite in the earlier fights because you have dominance, right? You have someone that's just superior to somebody else. And sometimes that -400, -500 has value. But I'll ask you, Andy, this is working. Will it continue to work? And the big picture for me when something works, whether it's the financial markets or the sports betting market, is why is it working and will it continue to work now that we know about it, right? And is it because these are heavily, the bigger fights are more publicly bet, right, than the undercard? And do you think the public is buying in on those small favorites and they're going to continue to play them? Is that why we're going to keep getting value with dogs?
Yeah, listen, my play in the UFC was on the undercard, and I took two heavy favorites and I parlayed them. Both of my guys knocked out and submitted their opponents. So what happens is on the prelim is you just have a much bigger gap in the talent between these fighters. But in the pay-per-view, it's the best of the best. I mean, Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, these guys are equal. So there shouldn't be a -150 and a +130. But I just think the casual bettor looks at the card, sees a big favorite, and says, oh, that means that they must win, instead of looking at it going, no, they're on the main card for a reason because they're really good. And when you get into a sport like MMA where one kick, one punch could change the entire complexion of the fight, these are the best of the best. And over the long term, I mean, listen, the last 5 UFC pay-per-views, 12 and 14 on the underdogs, you're profitable. If you're betting 105 underdogs, I mean, these are plus 200. I think this is long term. I think this is something that you might be able to exploit because it's been going on for a while. It's certainly been hitting this year, and it's certainly the way to look when you get to these pay-per-view main cards.
Well, as you can tell, Andy knows his UFC, and it's not a bad time to try him out right now because normally his UFC best bet for this upcoming weekend is $25, but because it's $9 Monday, you're getting his UFC Gold best bet perfect in the last 2 events for just $9. You can wait till Tuesday. You can wait till later in the week. The line will probably move, and you'll pay $25. You can get a better price. Shop the market now and get it for just $9 because it's $9 Monday at WagerTalk.com. All right, Andy, great talk there on the UFC. Let's move back to baseball now. We've got Bryan Leonard. We had Marco D'Angelo. Now we got Bryan Leonard, and we're going to talk some more baseball. And Bryan, I mentioned how you're an underdog player. We just talked about underdogs in UFC. I know you love a good dog in baseball, but you also look at totals as well. You look at first 5. So let's break something down here for the viewers on Monday. And the first game we're going to talk about here with you today, I believe, is the Tampa Bay New York Yankee game. And I think Marco actually might take a look at this game later on MLB First Pitch, but I want to get your take first. We talked about Baltimore, Toronto, talked about the Red Sox. These are the other 2 teams in the AL East. They're all in the playoff race. Tampa, New York. Judge is back. Will that help this faltering offense? Right.
Guy, and then he goes and talks about in and out, and he names his play the Grand Slam. That tells you why Marco's a bigger guy. And you also mentioned, Steve, that you get irritated by the judges. I get irritated by people who have the rankings in college football, the top 25 rankings. They haven't played a game yet. How do they know who the top 25 teams are? You never know. It's a crapshoot, and it's even worse when people argue that we're number 7, we should be number 5. No, you don't know what you are at this point. You haven't even played a game yet, haven't even been on the field. So Yeah, a lot of things that people really argue about. It's like, let it play out. Who cares? As we sit here and we're talking about games that are coming up later today, that we could just wait.
Yeah,
and
but
let
Brian,
these games play out.
but they'll be played out, right? They'll be played
That's
out, unlike
right.
the college football playoff, which is basically judges and polls, right? Because a good part of that formula is still a poll. And I'm with you, man. That's a good analogy. And I look at the polls for my videos and for contrarian indicators. But man, you and I and Andy, all of us, none of us as handicappers really know what the AP ranking is on a particular team because it normally doesn't matter, right, Brian?
Yeah, I'll have a conversation with my brother-in-law who is basically the squarest guy out there, and he wants to play. He says, I can't bet this guy. He's got a 7-run ERA. I go, he had one bad inning on the season. I mean, you got to look into it a little bit harder than that. But let's get back to the baseball games today. Tampa Bay and the Yankees. While the Rays bats have gone silent over the last month, Tyler Glasgow's been really good. He's regained his dominance after a long layoff of Tommy John surgery. He comes in with a 3.36 ERA, 1.12 WHIP. Yeah, and if you take a look at his advanced stats, he's even better. His xFIP is 2.61, Sierra 2.96. His strike percentage, which is getting to be a little bit more popular now. I'm not talking his strikeout percentage. I'm talking about his strike percentage. The amount of pitches he throws that he gets a strikeout of, 34.8%, which blows away anybody else who's pitching today on a Monday. He's the premier pitcher on the card today, and I really like the way he's pitching. Domingo Germán has really come into his own this season. His advanced numbers show a 4.05 xFIP, 3.94 Sierra, but he's been a bit fortunate with a 236 BABIP. So if you take a look at his advanced numbers, we're seeing something. He's been very good, but he could be a guy that we can fade going forward. We'll see how that goes. But, he's a guy that was suspended for a game earlier because they thought of some substance abuse, but he's just been very good for the Yankees. In fact, he's probably been their most consistent starter on the season other than Cole, who is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's going to be a future Hall of Famer. But I just don't trust this Tampa Bay offense right now. I think Germán's going to have some success against them. The Yankees right now, at least to me, even with Judge in the lineup, are not a team I'm looking to bet on at this point. So I like for this game to go under. We've got two teams where the offenses have not been good, and we've got two pitchers who are pitching very well right now. So I'll take the under in this game.
Brian, 8.5. It seems low. Wouldn't you? I mean, obviously, you'd like to have a little bit of a higher number, but I don't know. 8.5. You got a couple teams. This is Tampa that put up 8 yesterday. They've gotten to 4 a couple times, and the Yankees. Every once in a while, they can have a little bit of a pop, but 8.5. Does that number kind of scare you because it just feels a little low?
It's there for a reason. I put out a play the other day, a 5-inning play, and the first half line was 5 all over. And I went into our back end, and all they had was 4.5. And I had to think about it. I said, well, I'm going to play it. If I like it at 5, I'll play it at 4.5. And they scored like 2 runs in the first 5. So if the line is that way, there's a good reason for that line being there. And I think this will be a low-scoring game. So, yeah, 8.5. I'd rather have 9. Obviously, I'd rather have 9. But the 8.5 tells you with these two teams that maybe it is an under game, and I think that's the way it'll go.
Bryan Leonard, talking some AL East. Brian, we talked about the Baltimore Orioles earlier, and I said they have the best record in the American League, but the best team in all of baseball and the best team in the National League is the Atlanta Braves. They've been fantastic this season. Angels, though, maybe some will feel they've underachieved, but they're right in the mix. They're half a game ahead of Seattle. They're in 3rd in the division right now in the AL West. So another important matchup. We got some really important playoff matchups tonight all across the board in baseball, and this is another one. Angels against the Braves in Atlanta. What are you doing with this one?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad they decided to keep Ohtani because I played the Angels season wins over before the season. I think it's the first time I've ever played the Angels over. Yeah. And if they were going to trade him away, I didn't think I was going to end up very well. But good for them. And they brought in a couple guys that should help the offense from the Rockies, which is always a concern when you take a team that plays in the altitude of Colorado and then go somewhere else. You wonder if they're going to be the road way they played in those games or if they're the home team. So we'll have to see. But they did make an effort, and they brought some guys in. The outfielder got hit in the face the other day, Ward, so he might not play for a while. So they had to do something. And so at least the management's coming out there saying, okay, we're putting it all in line, and I think that's going to help them here. They got Griffin Canning on the mound, and Griffin Canning's been a guy. He's maybe their best pitcher other than Ohtani in the last month or so. He's pitched very well. He's got a 4.46 ERA, 24 WHIP. But if you take a look at his advanced stats here, I do have concerns about his home run to fly ball percentage, which is 18.6. That's where he's gotten into trouble this year. And if you've been watching Atlanta, especially at home, that's a launching pad in the summer when it gets hot. And Atlanta's got such great offensive players that could be what we have a concern for the Angels here. I use the Angels as my free play today just because I want to go against Charlie Morton. I thought the line was too high with Charlie Morton. He really has not pitched that well. So I think the Angels will do something here. But he's allowed, Griffin Canning, 2.09 home runs on the road this season. I think Atlanta will also take advantage of that. So I'm looking for a high-scoring game. Mentioned Charlie Morton, he's a veteran who's been very good for a long time, but he's got a 4.33 Sierra along with a 1.42 WHIP. That's not really Charlie Morton. This could be his final last couple seasons here. He has not pitched well, but his record's been pretty good. He's been pretty lucky to get the ERA he has right now. But if you take a look at the last 14 days for both of these teams offensively, the Braves are crushing the opposition. 52.3% of balls are hit over 95 miles an hour. They are just raking right now. Next closest is Texas at 44.8. So they got a big advantage over the opposition. They're just hitting the hell out of the ball right now. And during that same 2 weeks, Atlanta's WRC plus is 127, but the Angels come in at 123. So the Angels hitting well right now. Braves hitting well. Griffin Canning gives up a lot of home runs, and I want to bet against Charlie Morton right now. So the total is 10. It's 10 for a reason. I think it goes up. Last few days I've been playing the Milwaukee Braves games over the total, and all of them were decided very early if you like the over in those games. So I think we'll see another one. Give me some offense tonight in the Angels and Atlanta.
Well, so Brian, the Angels not scoring a lot of runs over the weekend. 1 run against Toronto, 1 run against Toronto, and then they technically scored 3, but 2 of them were in the 10th inning. I don't know, blip on the radar, or was it great pitching by Toronto, a little bit of a cold streak, or obviously you like the play, so you're not worried about it. You expect them to regress back to what they were doing before that. But any cause for concern with not scoring runs over the weekend?
Well, anytime you don't have Trout in the lineup, that's going to affect that team, and he's been out for a while. But I like the changes that they have made, and you're right, they did not hit well against Toronto. And overall, Toronto, other than their ace, they do have some concerns. I think they're bringing up Ryu to pitch tomorrow. He's been out for a long time, having Tommy John surgery. So they've got some guys that are coming up, but the weakness out of that Toronto team has been the pitching staff. And as you mentioned, the Angels didn't do very well over the weekend. So I think they'll bounce back a little bit here. They've got too much talent in that regard. And some of the guys they've had have been slumping, some of their big power hitters. So they haven't played well as of late. So it's coming around. I'm not going to look at individual games, but I think they'll come out and play well tonight in that regard. But it's a good point because they did not play well offensively against Toronto at all.
That's Bryan Leonard. He's got an MLB double play for $9 Monday. And Brian, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, you just got both my plays for today. When I'm on the Monday show, I try to give out the plays that I have. And I usually don't have a lot of plays on Monday because the card's small. But these are my 2 best bets. So I saved you $9. You talked about underdogs, and I've been on just a tremendous underdog streak. The last 33 times I've given out an underdog, I'm up 40.8 units of profit. So underdogs have been really good lately, but I just couldn't find anything on the card that I thought had some value other than the Angels. But they're a huge underdog in that regard. So just an opinion on that. But I made it up to number 2 on the season now after the nice weekend we've had. So looking at number 1, I think that's Gianni, and he puts out so many plays. I don't think I'll ever catch him, because we're looking at net winners and net profit. But I'm happy with the season we've had in baseball, and my clients are happy also, and I'm seeing it really well right now. I believe we won 4 straight days. So let's keep it going. I don't have to pay anything for my place today, but there's other guys on the site, including Marco, who said he had the big 4% play, and he doesn't put out a lot of big plays. I think I only had 2 5% last month. I don't do that either. Dave Koken doesn't put out a lot of big plays. So take the guys that are got big plays going for you today, get some winners, and congratulations to both of you for the seasons you've had, and keep up the winning in all the sports that you handicap.
Well, you might have just gotten Brian's 2 best bets for $9 Monday for free, but you can still take advantage of his number 2 ranking this season in baseball. First of all, he'll be on MLB First Pitch on Wednesday, and that's the daytime edition once again. So hit subscribe, hit the bell for instant alerts. And you can also get a 30-day package from Brian. Normally it's $189. It's just $139 with MLB 30. That's a special $50 discount on any Cappers baseball package, including Bryan Leonard right now. MLB 30 gets you an instant $50 discount. So think about signing up with Brian, number 2 this year in MLB. All right, Andy, you and I will be back on Friday, so we will have a chance to work together again. But you'll be with the Prez tomorrow on Tuesday. So for our BS Better segment question before we finish the show here, I'm going to do it first. I'm going to ask the question. And this is for one of our loyal viewers, Steve Merrill, here on WagerTalk TV. And Steve wants to know, what is your daily handicapping process to determine best bets? And Andy, I'll give you mine afterwards, but I really want to hear yours because you're a good guy to ask because you handicap probably more different sports than most people. You've got tennis, golf, UFC, motorsports, and you still do the major, sports like I do, like baseball, basketball, and football. You do it from a prop perspective. So I'm really curious to hear what your daily routine is. I'm sure there's some similarities with mine, but there's probably some differences as well.
Yeah, I already know what I'm betting this week. That's the key to me, is daily handicapping process. I'm a week out. I knew what my UFC best bet was going to be on Saturday for this week. Before the event on Saturday, I knew what I was going to be betting for next week. Going into this baseball week, I already know what I'm betting for the week. I already know that Max Verstappen to win the next race is going to be a part of my portfolio. I know, for example, that the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL cannot stop running back, so I'm ready to take the running back in the CFL who's playing the Stampeders over his total. Golf, I know that this is the week before the playoffs really start, so it's going to be a fairly weak field. I already know what players I'm going to bet on. So when that question is asked, what's the daily handicapping process? I just think if you wake up and you're starting to kind of look for your bets going into that day, you're behind. At least that's the way I personally feel. I'm a week out. That's the best way to do it. I've been working nonstop behind the scenes. I'm already waiting for certain players and certain numbers to come out for week 1 for NFL player props. We're a ways out before that happens, but I'm going to be ready for it. So if you're asking what's the daily handicapping process, today my daily process was just making sure the week is out and the week is still going according to plan and that the lines still match up. So I don't like getting up and then trying to plan the day. Like for UFC, if you wake up Saturday and you're trying to put in, UFC plays, you've missed all the line movements. You've missed everything that's happened throughout the week. So I think the key, your daily handicapping processing, if you wake up on Monday and you're trying to figure out what you're betting on Monday, you're behind. You should be waking up on Monday and looking ahead towards the weekend. That's how far out you should be. So that's my opinion. That's what works best for me. I think last week we only had 17 or 18 bets, and I knew what most of them were going to be the week before. So my daily handicapping process is getting ready for a week out.
And once again, keep in mind, Andy and I handicap different types of sports. So when he said he had a mostly ready a week ahead, that was motorsports, tennis, golf, UFC, more weekly sports, I guess you could say. But now with the daily sport, such as baseball, the ultimate daily sport, because every team plays every day, basically. Basketball in the NBA, a semi-daily sport because you get back-to-backs. College basketball, you get 2 or 3 days off. NFL, you get a week off. Now, football is different because you can basically do what Andy's talking about and have everything ready on Monday for the following, weekend. But for daily sports, as far as a daily handicapping process for myself is whether you're doing it a week out like Andy or you're doing it on a daily basis like myself and maybe Teddy do, who do baseball every day with teams. I think the most important thing to do, first of all, is make a short list. And Andy didn't use the word short list, but basically that's what he's doing because he has play on situations, play on guys, and he knows going into that week what they are. And then maybe you fine tune that and figure out how you want to play it. Is it a first half, a first 5 inning, like we talked about, a full game, a certain prop in Andy's world? He does a lot of props. So for viewers out there, first of all, I would say before any of that, you got to figure out your lifestyle, right? If you're doing a 9-to-5 job, you're probably not able to handicap during 9 to 5 because you're going to be at a real work at the office. So for Andy and me as full-time handicappers, it's different. So I would say make sure it's going to fit your lifestyle. You might have to do your handicapping the night before to get ready if you're going to be at work the next day. But no matter how you do it, make sure you make a short list, because nowadays more than ever, you can find information on anything and you can go down rabbit holes and just keep reading information. And I think it's very important to take a forest from the trees perspective, narrow down the card to the shortest amount of games. Baseball, for example, 15 games a day. You need to quickly narrow that down to 4 or 5 games that you're looking at. That's how I do it. And then I'm very selective, quality over quantity. I usually narrow it down to 1 or 2 best bets that day. And I find I have a higher hit rate and it's more successful for me. There are some volume guys out there, but more times than not, volume guys have trouble winning long-term because the house knows what they're doing also. And you got to find those select edges every day. And Andy's talking about maybe just over the week, 12 to 18 plays. That's 2 to 3 games a day. That's kind of what I average long-term as well. So once again, make sure it fits your lifestyle, make a short list, and then have a routine that works for you. And really interesting question, because I do more daily sports. Andy does more kind of week-long things. And it just shows there's different ways to approach it. You got to figure out what works best for you in the sports that you are covering. By the way, if you have a viewer question, if you have a betting segment question, ask it in the comments below here on YouTube after the show. And we will get to those on a daily basis here, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific here on WagerTalk Today. And Andy, great show. You will be back tomorrow along with the Prez. So get an extra rest tonight. Get to bed early. Be ready to go. Bring your A game because the Prez expects nothing less. He was off Friday. He was off Monday. I'm sure he didn't work this weekend, so he's going to be ready to roll. He'll probably be actually very sleepy, so you're going to have to carry the show. So even more of a reason to get to bed. And viewers, even more of a reason to tune in tomorrow. And once again, Andy, tell us quickly about that big $9 best bet. We've talked some UFC today. You've got a nice advanced play. As you said, you get your stuff out early. Tell people how they should check out that $9 UFC best bet from Andy Lang.
Yeah, purposely didn't put this UFC play out until $9 Monday, so you can grab it for $9. I've been saying the last couple weeks, I only need one play to turn a profit in UFC. Worked the last couple weeks. We've got our best bet that's up right there. It's a plus money play. So go ahead and grab that. It's the only play that I have up right now. We are low volume. So when we have a play up for sale, it should be worth your attention. So Road to Millions videos we do every day on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. And Steve, always a pleasure doing videos with you.
Yeah, buddy. Andy and I started together on Wager Talk 3 years ago doing NASCAR shows, and look where we've come, filling in for the Prez and Teddy. My goodness, we should say they fill in for us. But hey, Andy mentioned $9 Monday. I've got a steamroller best bet. You know, Andy, normally it's $25 for each of our plays. You get them both tonight for $9 each. That's $18. I'll give you some math on the way out. That's $7 left over for a sandwich for lunch. So check out $9 Monday at wagertalk.com. I've got a strong steamroller MLB best bet for Monday. Andy Lang's got that advanced UFC best bet for this weekend. Do this again tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific here on WagerTalk TV. Like, subscribe, and comment below, and have a great Monday night. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you again soon.